Okay, thank you all for joining us. This is our third and final Catonsville Sustainable Community Work Group meeting, and we will be focusing on economy and quality of life. You can go to the next slide. So our basic agenda for the night has been the same format as the previous meetings. As you know, we're here to discuss economy and quality of life. We'll discuss each topic one at a time, starting with the economy for the first 40 minutes and then moving on to quality of life for the second half for 40 minutes as well. And during each of these discussions, we will talk about what was said in the 2018 application, what some takeaways from our survey were that were released from that first kickoff survey, and then we'll get into having a group conversation about what you feel should be priorities, what the strengths, and what the weaknesses are for each of those topics. I'm going to add some of these attendees to the panelist list. Hello to those of you who just joined us. We just got started, so you didn't miss too much. On the call tonight, not only do we have our work group members and members of the Catonsville community, we have a lot of county agencies representing us that can answer any questions that come up and hopefully provide some insight into what they're working on and what their agency is kind of prioritizing. And then we also have a few representatives from Community Assistance Network, though I'm not sure if they're here yet, and Neighbor Space. So again, briefly, for those of you who are not familiar yet with the program, or for those of you joining for the first time, Sustainable Communities is a state designation program that allows designated communities to have access to various state grants and loan programs, such as Community Legacy, that support the revitalization of that community. And this application must be renewed every 5 years to maintain that. This chart on the right-hand side of the slide is some of those grant programs that are available. This again is our sustainable community boundary. The blue area is what the existing boundary is, and the yellow area is what we are proposing to add. And then discussions will primarily revolve around areas located within these boundaries, including the expansion area. So we are going to go ahead and get started with the economy. This is just a reminder of what the format of the action plan looks like. So as you can see, there are 3 components: strengths, weaknesses, and then desired outcomes with relevant strategies and partners. And this section is centered on economic growth and management. So some of the strengths and weaknesses might focus on business attraction and retention, improving and maintaining the health of business districts or downtowns and main streets, commercial vacancy reduction, workforce attraction, employment training, marketing, branding, tourism, and kind of all of those things that encompass the economy and economic health of an area. Streetscaping and beautification is another thing that can come up in this topic. You can go to the next slide. So as we review the previous plan and some of the survey takeaways, think about how those statements reflect how you see the current situation of the community. If they don't reflect it, how would you revise it? Anything you would change or remove or add, everything that you can think of for that. So these are the survey takeaways from our kickoff survey that had to do with economy. As you can see, some of the strengths were walkable stores and services, downtown Catonsville as a strength in itself, Catonsville Chamber of Commerce, a nice community of small businesses, a variety of stores, and a growing business area. Some of the weaknesses focused on commercial vacancies, a slow redevelopment process, and a lack of workforce housing. And then some of the outcomes that people mentioned were reusing and repurposing existing commercial buildings, improving the visual character of Main Street on 144, investment in a cooperative market, and increasing community serving businesses. You can go to the next slide. So these are the strengths that were listed in the 2018 application. As you can see, the first one is a high level of educational attainment compared to the rest of the county. Higher education institutions providing a large number of high quality jobs and services. BW Tech was mentioned, which offers a large supply of square footage for flexible office space. A vibrant and creative small business community and a thriving arts scene. And the last one was historical, environmental, and cultural resources, both within and surrounding the sustainable community area that draw visitors to the region. So now I think we are going to go ahead and start off and open the conversation to what are some of the other strengths that you feel are important to mention for the community. And you can either raise your hand or just unmute. Namita, any thoughts as the Chamber of Commerce that you've noticed?
Hi, Sophie. The vacancies that I just want to talk about the weaknesses, the vacancies. Yes, that's definitely a problem that we're seeing. And honestly, I'm very new to this role, so I'm trying to figure out how we can help. And I'm more and more into the community, but any thoughts from you guys will be greatly appreciated.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Sophie, I'm sorry, I jumped in a little bit late here. We're talking about strengths and weaknesses or strengths regarding what exactly? Quality of life or the economy?
About economic health of the community, strengths of the economy in Catonsville. So that can include, I think Gonay put some of the ideas in the chat. Marketing, branding, tourism, cultural assets, access to job trainings, the health of Main Street or any other commercial centers that you feel should be mentioned. And I know some of the strengths from the 2018 application were pretty all encompassing. So if there's nothing to add, I think we can move on to weaknesses, and I'm sure some of the benefits of the community will pop up as we kind of talk about that. All right. I think we'll move on to weaknesses just because I think that will be a little bit more of a discussion point. So as you can see on the slide, the action plan only listed 3 weaknesses from 2018. The first one was the downsizing federal workforce. I think they were mentioning the federal plazas that are in the Security Square area, which is just outside our sustainable community area. A need to improve the connection with UNBC on events, projects, and initiatives. And I know that's something that came up a little bit last week. And then some of the commercial areas are in poor physical condition or more prone to vacancy. So what are some of the other weaknesses, or if anybody wants to expand on some of the existing weaknesses listed here?
I'm going to say, you know, as far as our commercial areas, I feel like in some ways we haven't kept pace. I feel like we're kind of like, you know, the first into a market, but we don't really, we haven't been able to keep pace as far as quality, especially in the retail, in our retail corridors like US 40. You know, that we've been passed up for some quality retail that would typically be in that type of commercial district. And I really feel like, you know, when I've talked to the companies about this, you know, they bring up crime, they bring up issues as far as income when they start looking at when they start doing mapping. They'll look within so many miles, and you know, you run into some of the poorest districts in West Baltimore or within those within those circles that they draw there. So, you know, I really think that we need some real. We need to make sure that we keep it current, and we can attract the businesses here that really that Catonsville should be attracting.
Hmm.
especially when we have areas where we already have the zoning.
Hmm. Yeah. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I'll throw in my 2 cents, Sophie. Certainly all the barriers and hurdles for small incremental developers, in the area. Again, the county does not really function to help the property owner that wants to build an accessory dwelling unit, on their property, yet we bend over backwards for the large developer that wants to do a huge subdivision, just as an example. So, I think there is this pent-up demand of economic activity that is small local businesses, that money stays in our community. By definition, it is more sustainable. And again, if the county can possibly try, I know it's difficult because we've been doing it for so long, but to try to break out of this kind of, what's often referred to as the silo approach, and try to have, a team approach, a more synergistic approach to help people that want to do that, combined with zoning reform, pre-approved design, and things like that. I think we're going to see a lot of economic activity around. I think that that's a big a big weakness that, if we can get over that, I think we'd see a lot of stuff happen.
Hmm. Yeah, thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts?
I think we also need,
Go ahead.
I also think we need to think about how are we going to make this, to put Catonsville on the map. I mean, at the end of the day, we have the incomes, we have a major university. Next town over, we have two major federal installations there with tens of thousands of employees. I mean, we really should be thinking about, what do we need to do to foster Catonsville as a destination? If that could be like a conference space. There's several hotels on Route 40, and it would be nice to have something that would bring people to Catonsville. And to say, this Catonsville place, that I went there, I had a conference there, it was pretty nice. I really think that we need to be thinking along those lines.
Hmm. You bring up a really good point. I think that tourism is an opportunity. I mean, 144 is a National Historic Road, so I think that's something that's mentioned in one of the outcomes that we'll see in a minute. But that's a good point.
Sophie, do you mind if I go again?
Go ahead.
So certainly, Euclidean zoning is a weakness, that prevents, economic activity, on the smaller scale. I mean, it's always, a lot of times we focus on economic activity of really large employers, and tech and things like that. But, we do have to remember that very small employers make up the backbone of economic activity, not only in our area, but the country as a whole. And to try to find ways to kind of do that, whether it is, I had heard things that we allowed bed and breakfasts now. Do you know anything about that, Sophie?
I'm not familiar, but I'm not sure if anybody else on the call might be from the county.
Yeah, Kathy, do you know anything? I see that Kathy Engers is in this call. Kathy, do you know anything about that?
I'm sorry, I had to step out and I just came back.
Do you know anything? I recall hearing some time ago about bed and breakfasts being allowed in kind of these residential neighborhoods in Catonsville. Did I misunderstand that, or?
I have not heard anything about that, but I can certainly check on it. I can check. Or Sophie, I don't know if you've heard anything, but I can I can check on that, but it doesn't sound familiar to me, but no, I don't know if they're talking about like Airbnbs or.
Well, the reason why I bring it up because, I think heritage tourism, and I see that Aaron's on for Shapiro from the Patapsco Heritage Greenways on the call as well. The Patapsco State Park is a gem. We've talked about UMBC, but certainly the heritage, economic development activities, I mean, I'd personally like to see them expanded a little bit. And being able to, in these older homes in Catonsville, to be able to have bed and breakfasts here to kind of build some capacity for that industry, just seems like a good fit. Just seems like a real
Yeah.
good fit.
With UMBC, it would be nice to have that option for parents.
Yeah, yeah.
I'd like to add to what Paul's saying with the more flexible zoning and allowing for businesses within
Right.
residential. One of the things that I think could be really helpful on some of our legacy corridors is maybe some OR zoning, like office residential zoning, which would allow for, if you wanted to have an accounting practice or you wanted to have a physician's office, they allow basically for a low density office zoning, and I think that would help. It would help create an economic activity. It really doesn't create a situation where you're going to be taking housing off the market because it can be used as residential. And on top of it, when you have legacy corridors with a lot of traffic, they may be, better suited just because of the traffic situation to allow for commercial activity like offices.
Well, they have that residential office zoning, the RO zoning in some spots.
That's what I'm saying. Like maybe have that by right along some of our corridors.
Mm-hmm.
Hi.
I see your hand up. Sally, you can go ahead.
Sorry. I was just going to say, hi, I'm Sally Nash. I'm the Deputy Director of the Permits, Approvals, and Inspections. And we do have, as of 2018, there are some provisions to allow bed and breakfasts in DR and RC zones. There's, a certain amount of restrictions, but they are permitted. We also do allow short-term rentals. You just have to register your rental.
Gotcha. Thank you.
This is Aaron. I was going to quickly add to Paul's comment. And I know Matthew mentioned earlier, I think he noted a couple hotels along Route 40, but my understanding would be that the state is going to measure, they're measuring tourism through hotel and lodging taxes, but those hotels on Route 40 aren't in the sustainable community boundaries. And really the only thing you have would be, I guess, as Sally just mentioned, the private Airbnbs would be the only way the state would actually measure tourism. So day use tourism isn't really effectively measured in any meaningful way. And certainly, or it's not viewed as someone who might come up and visit Banneker Historical Park or go to the Patapsco Valley State Park. Maybe they stop and have lunch somewhere, and then if they leave, it's not sort of being registered as a tourist visit. In the way that, because they're not staying in the area, and there literally is nowhere for them to stay. But it's also not being registered through hotel and lodging taxes because they don't exist in the community.
Well, if we expand the lines, the boundaries with the proposed boundaries, there are several hotels that would be in that area, including the Holiday Inn on US 40 and the Comfort Inn that's also on US 40.
Right, but it would have to be expanded. I was just acknowledging as I see the current boundaries, there are no, beyond an Airbnb in someone's home, there's actually no lodging in the sustainable community, visitor lodging.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the boundary does not include businesses along Route 40. I do think it might be worth, noting that maybe there's a difference between local tourism and people coming from maybe an hour away where it's a day trip. So maybe it's a struggle with how tourism is tracked and who are the people visiting. Joe, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm Joe Gardangi, and I'm the head of the Music City of Maryland Association. And we work with our Centennial District, got involved probably about 4 years ago. And we've been putting on events in Catonsville for the past 3 years where we've easily bring in at one of our events, 10,000 plus people in a day and turn Catonsville basically into a small Nashville. And to get back to what Matt and Paul are kind of gearing at and the sustainability of, you can only have like a day event. You can't have a 3-day event because there's nowhere for people to stay the night. And it's a very valid point, what everybody's bringing up, in that if we're going to try to bring in tourism and have it where you want them to stay more than one day and visit the local community and businesses and so forth, something has to be done about, where they sleep, where they stay, and et cetera, and how to accommodate those people, because you want to keep the cash flow coming in over a period of time, not just a 11-hour window. So it's very valid points here. And like Paul has mentioned a couple of times, and Matt was talking about working with UMBC and bridging the gap down to RPUs and so forth. And we have an opportunity here to basically build a swath from Catonsville down to Arbutus, working with GABA and other associations and whatnot. But to do so, we need accommodations, and whether that's you apply for a 1-day permit for B&B or you rezone and incorporate some other type of hotels, or have something else built instead of BWI, you're just not going to attract that. And we do our best to bring those people on a given day, if all year long. But where we fall short of getting that recurring income for the local businesses is there's no overnight places to stay. So it's a great topic. I think it should be explored more.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. You bring up some good points. Matthew, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, to add to Joe's comments, I mean, furthermore, we don't really have like a year-round indoor venue either. And I really think that maybe a flexible venue that would be able to be used for conferences, could be used for small concerts, etc. Especially maybe on the US 40 corridor, where you have good transportation there. You got a 6-lane highway in and out and it's quick to the Beltway. I think it could really help out. You could have those hotels right there, and you don't have the issue, as much of an issue with noise during many hours. It's it's when those things are going on. It's late at night, and it's a commercial corridor. A lot of those businesses are just shut down, and it's not as much of an impact on the residents' life.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Todd, do you want to speak to any of the tourism things really quickly?
Yeah, sure. Evening all. So we have a new tourism manager that's on board. Her name's Abby. And so over the next few months, I'm going to have her start connecting with the different areas of the county, especially this area, to really start identifying some of the needs for tourism. And then that connects over to economic development, quality of life, and just general amenities. The university, UMBC, they just opened a few years ago, their arena, their event center arena. And I'm curious to see, get everyone's thoughts on how to try to package Catonsville with, if UMBC has some events and they're bringing people in, how to make it so that Catonsville is a destination, or that area is a destination for people to go out for dinner, to come and explore that area, support the restaurants and shops in there, and while also having transportation down to UMBC. And as everyone noted, I also looked at, I'm looking at the Google Maps right now and just typed in hotels. There's no hotel between, from Route 40 down to I-95, that whole area. There's no accommodations other than, I'm sure, Airbnbs through there, but accommodations would be another thing that we're missing. But I'd like to get people's thoughts on how the amenities such as the arena at UMBC, which does bring in national acts, kind of a smaller venue, but how could that benefit the Catonsville area with helping small businesses?
Joe, go ahead.
Yeah, so just following up what you stated, the reason we started our association was just that. We're currently partnering with UMBC and GABA down in Arbutus, and the goal is to can we make UMBC kind of like the hub and the spoke, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
like the central focal point of this area, and use that as a center for increasing the economic spend between Catonsville and Arbutus, and even at the Elk Ridge and so forth, the surrounding neighboring um, um, towns. And the biggest thing we got to do is we got to create those partnerships, and that's what we do. That's our whole focus as an association.
Mhm.
And we bring in the events, we bring in the music, we manage it all, the whole 9 yards. Whether it's Tom Petty, who's no longer with us, or whomever, and
Yeah.
we've been doing this for 2 years, on a weekly basis, and then a monthly basis, and then of course several huge festivals. And now we're working with UMBC and GABA down our views to do exactly what you just said. And your issue, like Paul brought up, and I know where Paul's coming from, is where they stay. And
Yeah.
it's a valid point from Route 40. I know exactly. It's the old Johnson's hotel you looked at, down to, basically I-95 South. But there are facilities here in Catonsville that aren't being utilized that we could use, such as, the old elementary school sitting on Frederick Road, just sitting there with no use. It could be a cultural arts center with a music venue in it and so forth. And I know years ago they were going to tear it down, but we stood there and held hands and fought for that building to stay up. And what are we doing with it? It could be a focal point. We don't even have a welcome center where people can, come in and get information from a tourism standpoint. We actually had the Historical Society, Catonsville Historical Society, folded because they couldn't sustain themselves, where people could learn about the area and get information and drive in. So there's all levels that we have to, as I recognize Aaron here from Heritage and so forth, and we got to work together and work under a single umbrella, and not just individually how we got to do this. It needs to be a master plan. And I know in 2018, A&E came together, which is great. But if we're going to set up arts and entertainment districts, throughout the state of Maryland, we need to be the model. This area needs to be the model, and we got to show the rest of the state how it's done. And we got some legs going here, but we gotta speak in one voice, and everybody put their business plans together and figure out economically what's being done from a development standpoint, what's need to be done. I know Paul's a big advocate on use at Spring Grove, proper use and so forth. So like if we work together, I don't see it would be that hard. We just have to have the county back us and work together as one voice, and really we could blow the doors off here. Catonsville to Arbutus could be a mini Nashville. You could even take it down to Ellicott City, and it would just spawn. But we gotta use or reuse some of the facilities we have sitting here not being used in the Catonsville area, which Matt mentioned. Like an indoor venue or a multi-use area that can be the star of the town, and it's the beginning of a lot of things. It can, we got to start somewhere. You start small, you build big, but the UMBC relationships are very central. I'm very familiar with the arena over there. Is it properly run? I know it's contracted out and so forth like that, but it could be used for so much. Event centers, business meetings, all kinds of things, and everybody's willing to work together. We gotta get a master plan together.
Yeah, hopefully that this Sustainable Communities Action Plan is the first step, and the first step in creating a unified plan for the area. Arbutus has a sustainable community plan as well, so hopefully we can make sure that there's some crossover between those. And
just to kind of follow up on that, to speak what Todd was saying, Arbutus on the GABA board has, I think Joe Regier, he's on there from his transportation and events and so forth like that. and they've done a good job of welcoming those UMB students with, it's a destination to go because all the local businesses, the small businesses, we don't have any large businesses here in Catonsville. We know everybody that owns a business because we grew up with them, born and bred here. And we need to get UMBC involved in Catonsville, where we have UMBC flags on or just little, what do you call them, spot banners, where those students know they can come here, work with their transportation and I've talked to the UMBC several times, and they're willing to change their route paths and their time schedules if we want to have an event or festival or arts festival or whatnot, and really engage on that student community, because that's sustainability. I mean, that's economic growth. There's dollars there. They need a destination to come, as Matt stated earlier. And that's kind of going back to UMBC is, I think that's where we start. And you start getting an influx in there, and we get the buy-in from all the local businesses, such what Arbutus did several years ago. Any student can walk in, show their ID, and get like a 20% discount on whatever they're buying. Not alcohol, of course, but food and apparel and whatnot. And I think that right there is just a baby step that would be easy to fix as a bridge, just to get the influx and grow the economy a little bit, and then start taking other steps. So just kind of insight on what I'm hearing here.
Matt, go
So,
ahead.
so Joe, I you were talking about, like, if you wanted to do like a multi-day festival or something like that. I don't know if there's anybody from Patapsco State Park on here, but I'm wondering if that could be utilized too, since that's a stone throw from Catonsville, and you could have folks come and camp out and things like that, and have something along those lines. Maybe have the festival take over a section of the park for a weekend, once a year or something like that. I remember being at going up to Del Fest up in around Cumberland, and they did that, and it's going pretty successfully.
So
They're like on their 12th year.
So that's a great idea, and we're already. So the way we started was a few years back. We threw the first Music City Maryland Festival in the Catonsville area. We had like 12 to 15,000 people in one day. We had 28 bands play, 4 stages located throughout Catonsville, all buy-in from local businesses. We fundraised it probably 150 grand to do it, without any state help or assistance whatsoever. And that was our first go around. Last year we had Crack the Sky headline, and we had like 3 other locations, and that was probably 8,000 person turnout in Catonsville. All the restaurants were packed. Everybody made a ton of money. And then we did the Music City Maryland Festival again, with a twist. Now we're partnered with CAA, Christian Athletic Association, which is a piece of property that is underutilized, the old St. Timothy's location. And we have, for next year, I think 17 single day events. We're doing Saturdays in the park once a month, and then we're doing 2 huge festivals over there. So we're kind of using that open space with that. Our goal is to make it a community park and assist that association in achieving their goals. The president over there, Dave Track, and so forth. And working with the Arts Guild and working with A&E and so forth. So, but hey, man, I did a Del Fest too, and it's a great time. And I'm all about incorporating, Hollyfield and working with, having the events here in Catonsville, but working with like Hollyfield and down to Hilton and so forth, and adjacent state parks where those people can actually spend the weekend. And now we can do a 3-day event and have buy-in from, Rails and Trails to Heritage to whomever that wants to participate, and we all benefit from it. And that's a great idea, Matt.
Hey Joe, have you been behind Westtown Elementary? They have like a nice little amphitheater back there. I noticed it's never used, and it's tiered off, and it's kind of nice. If it's a piece of property you might be able to utilize at some point.
Yeah,
They actually don't do anything but from the hills top to the bottom there, and it would be really nice. You could have probably several hundred people there.
yeah, we've looked at that, which is a great location, and we at the same time we were wondering, who do we contact? What's the contact on that? And that could be
That
easily be an evening event there, just a lot like Frederick Red Fridays or something like
I
that.
think BCBS owns that piece of land,
Mhm.
and they have and the elementary school has a large parking lot at the top there. So
Interesting. Yeah, maybe I can follow up with you and take it offline and we see, what we
yeah,
can do there, because we need to expand, and it's good. Use Catonsville as the hub, but we gotta build it like a tentacle. You know what I mean? And it's just every tentacle is a line of revenue coming back into the Catonsville Woods. As long as we expand the tourism and events, we can keep the economic growth into our town and
so
and begin
so
to do
Joe,
what we need to do. Yeah.
the area that I'm talking about is in the proposed expansion area. Just
Oh, perfect. Okay.
yeah, I think it would be something that could be added nicely, and it already exists.
Perfect.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. Those are some really good points. I really appreciate it. I did just want to quickly mention that Marianne from UMBC commented in the chat. Marianne, I'm not sure if you want to expand on that and unmute. You can go ahead.
Sure. Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for all the great comments. It's all very helpful, and I think it's all right in line with what we've been discussing. As Joe said, his group is working with UMBC and the Chesapeake Employers Insurance Arena, which used to be called the Event Center. And we've also been working for a couple years with the Greater Catonsville Chamber of Commerce and the Greater Arbutus Business Association on an effort that's called Extend Beyond Campus. And the idea is to get students and their families familiar with the communities around campus and to patronize local businesses, local restaurants. And it started out, so we have both a hard copy brochure and a companion website to allow students and their families to see things to do, places to eat, places to shop, centered around small businesses in both communities. And it also includes the UMBC transit stop that is nearest to all of these places, so that students understand whether they're a commuter student who parks on campus or someone who lives on campus, they can just jump on UMBC transit, leave their car on campus, and get to all these places for free.
Yeah, thank you. Paul, before you go, I think we're going to quickly transition to just show what the outcomes were from the previous plan. And then we can kind of continue chatting. So next slide. Yeah, thank you. So the previous plan had two very, very broad outcomes. The first one is to continue the revitalization of the commercial revitalization district. And those strategies that were listed were promoting our county tax credit, promoting our county revitalization action grants, and implementing plans for the Paradise commercial area. And the second outcome was to improve the condition and character of the businesses in less thriving areas of the sustainable community by utilizing county funds. So I know that we've already kind of mentioned some really important outcomes and strategies that I think will definitely come up again. One of the things that I'm hearing is there needs to be more hotels, more partnerships with UMBC, and a strategic partnership to make Catonsville more of a hub with students and heritage tourism. So we can take the screen away and kind of transition to some of those other strategies that we can think about to achieve these goals that respond to those weaknesses. Paul, do you want to go ahead with your comment? You're muted.
So we were talking about, am I on? We were
You're good
talking
now, yep.
about the possibility of, has UMBC ever considered sharing your transit system with the broader community? Because, we're talking a lot about getting the students to come here. But, I love going to UMBC. I'd love to go to a jazz performance or an arts, show or a dance recital or something like that. But, I have to drive there. And I think the more, kind of connectivity that you have, then that facilitates density without diminished quality of life because of congestion. And that's, that's something that's real important to me. And you're welcome to connect with me, outside the meeting, tonight if we can do something like that. But I personally don't think we need like hotels kind of out. I think that again, the zoning for bed and breakfasts where people can kind of come, park their car to stay for the weekend festival, to do a trail fest, to do whatever. And they're kind of right in the thick of it. It's funny that Joe's on the call. I live on the same street as Joe's mom. And guarantee right now I could go out on my street and probably street parking, there's 20, 30 parking spots that are there every single day that are, pent up, this asset for us that we're not able to take advantage of because of Euclidean zoning in these older residential neighborhoods. So there you go. Sorry.
Joe, do you want to go ahead next?
I just like, just to piggyback off of Paul, and he brings a valid point. When we have festivals, it's such a struggle, a permitting struggle with the county and parking issues. Like for some reason, the 4th of July, anything can go. People just pack the streets. But I definitely think there should be leniency on Airbnb here in Catonsville. We should, to Matt's point, thinking more about it. Do we need more hotels? We partner with Patapsco. There's several ways people enjoy to have that too over a festival. But the parking scenario in Catonsville, when you got to pull a permit, like you got to post a sign everywhere and do all this and that, and that's so restrictive to it's almost a hindrance. And yeah, I don't want to anywhere. I want to walk. You know what I mean? I want to park and walk. And so Paul makes very valid point with the statement, and I support that. So,
Matt, and then Paul afterwards. Go ahead.
Joe does make a good point with the parking situation. I mean, it does, that is a bit of a hindrance. Maybe we need to have something like when we do something like this, maybe on weekends have some parking that's away from the main street, that maybe a shuttle or something that can bring folks over. Maybe a garage. I mean, I don't think it's too far fetched with the density and the development to start thinking about things like a parking garage. Especially if they're in the future, if they need something built, that could accommodate a garage in the basement or for several floors. I do think, when we think of hotels, I mean, we're thinking like large, large hotels. But I mean, at the end of the day, we could we could have an inn with 30 rooms or something like that, right on Frederick Road or somewhere along those lines. I think that would be helpful as well. It doesn't have to be like, a giant Best Western that's built down there. But I'm not going to say that wouldn't be helpful in some areas of this town, but as far as if you want something that's walkable to Frederick Road, that you're going to have to be thinking on a smaller scale. I was in a town in Virginia a couple years ago, and they had a small like boutique hotel. They had like a brewery on the first floor, like a brew pub, and then like above it they had like 3 stories of rooms. So it's we could have something along those lines as well.
Those are good ideas. I do see a phone caller. The number starts with 410-218. I'm not sure if you wanted to add anything.
Hi. Thank you so much. My name's Kirby Spencer. I had a little challenge getting in. Yes, boutique hotel would be amazing because there's also a drive for that kind of venue, even with UMBC so close. But the parking too, I mean, I am just getting in, so I have not heard the beginning of the conversation. The walkability and all those things are amazing and very important also to our local community. But if and again, Kirby Spencer, founding member of Baltimore County Arts Guild and advisory member of the Catonsville Arts District. The tourism is what I see long-term to sustain all of our wishes in our different aspects of at least the arts and festivals and music and restaurants and economy and economic drive. And that is going to take parking that provides for outside. So if there is a avenue of shuttle outside, we don't have, we just have a limited finite amount of land in the village itself. So that is a big thing. And I am also a member of the parking committee that Don Moeller started and a few years back, and we've just had a study done, and there is not going to be a parking garage coming anytime soon. So how can we address those kinds of things, knowing that that's an underlining statement from the county?
Yeah, thank you for sharing. We did talk a lot about tourism earlier. And Matthew, I do see your comment in the chat, could office parks be contracted for weekend parking? I think that is something that the parking study does mention. I'm not sure when the finalized copy of that report will be shared, but
I know there's several like office parks and large office buildings, and their parking lots are empty on the weekends. So
yeah,
I'm sure a lot of those businesses, if they were provided with a lucrative contract, they probably go for it, because what else are they doing on the weekend? It's not generating revenue otherwise.
Yeah, I do know that there are a few parking lots that have very tiny signs that say you can park there not during business hours, but anytime after that is fine. So that's definitely something that's, confusing. Namita, do you want to go ahead? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, especially if we start talking about a shuttle, we can be looking at parking lots up to a mile away from Frederick Road at that point, and contracting those.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Again, that's a great suggestion. Again, we have to think about the economic baseline to the community and the businesses to help support that. The project of off-hour parking that the parking committee and Don has been so instrumental is actually getting a lot of these offices to commit voluntarily, not making money, but yet helping with the greater good. And because we are a small village, we are a small economic development commercial zone compared to Towson and all these others. So it's a little bit different. And we sort of have to think outside the box.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Namita, do you want to go ahead, and then Joe after her?
I just wanted to add, Kirby made that point that many of the businesses are doing this program where they are putting up signs after business hours, and they will not be towed, and people. So we are going to meet next week, the parking study committee, and we'll formally introduce what's being found in the parking study, and everybody will get to know about what's going to be done regarding parking in Catonsville.
Great, thank you for sharing. Any other comments before we kind of rotate to quality of life? No, all right. So welcome to part 2 of our discussion. Sorry for the quick transition. Again, this is the format of the action plan, 3 components, strengths, weaknesses, and desired outcomes. The projects in this section are concerned with public health, community culture, which we kind of already got into a little bit, and the day-to-day life of residents. So it's a very, very broad topic. But projects could include built environment, indoor spaces, outdoor environments for increasing community gardens and access to services, health and wellness facilities, programs for multiple generations, senior facilities, youth facilities, civic amenities, access to quality food, homelessness prevention, entertainment and education, It's a very, very broad topic, as you can tell. You can go to the next slide. And again, as we kind of go through the previous plan and the survey takeaways, think about those statements. How do they reflect what you currently think, and so on. You can go to the next slide. So on the slide here, these are the survey takeaways from our kickoff survey. And as you can see, or you will about to hear, it is very
Seems like Sophie's having some technical difficulties. She'll be right back.
I can hear you now.
lost internet.
We lost you for a minute.
Okay. I am back, and hopefully my internet will cooperate. So again, the strengths, I'm not sure how much was lost, but as you can see, there are a lot of strengths, weaknesses, and outcomes that were listed in the survey. Some of the strengths were the trails, the village feel of the community, access to various amenities and services, especially ones that you can walk to, good schools, a quality senior center, and a library. The Arts District, the Baltimore County Arts Guild, Frederick Road Fridays, and all the events that take place. Some of the weaknesses were a perception of increased crime, a need for more public trash cans and recycling cans, disjointed redevelopment with a lack of a unified goal, a need for more indoor performance spaces, whether that be a specific venue or in a restaurant, a need for additional green spaces. There's no dog park, and there's a lack of outdoor public gathering space in downtown Catonsville. Some of the outcomes that people mentioned were increasing music performances and increasing opportunities for new musicians by hosting talent shows or having musical acts at local restaurants, improved awareness of how residents can support local services and environmental initiatives, an improvement of Northeast Catonsville, so Ingleside and Academy Heights, and more public hangout spaces, as well as improved streetscaping and consolidating public land. So we'll go ahead and move on to the strengths from the previous plan. You can go to the next slide. Uh-oh. Am I still on?
Sophie, I'm on the strength now.
Oh, okay, thank you. I think my internet cut out for a second. So here are the strengths from the 2018 action plan. The first one was a crime rate that's lower than the countywide average. And I think actually I just got the data today that there has actually been a pretty huge decrease in the crime rate for the past 5 years. So that's good to hear. The second one was abundance of performing arts centers and concert opportunities. The third one was a strong sense of community and embodied monikers such as the Ville or Music City, Maryland. And the fourth one was widespread access to quality educational opportunities, public and private, libraries, historic assets, civic amenities, and faith-based organizations. So we can kind of go ahead and talk about some of the other strengths that you feel should be included in the action plan. I know that that was a lot and a bit of a mouthful, but feel free to use the chat or unmute. Matt, I see your hand is raised.
Yeah, I would say our existing infrastructure and having infrastructure for the density that we have here. And actually, it seems like we do have a little bit to spare in some regards. So that's one thing I think is really a strength of ours. We can put high density in on Route 40. We can do things on Frederick Road. I mean, we have the infrastructure here for a lot of that already.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. Monica, I'm not sure if you want to add anything. I know that you've had a public arts process that recently.
Well, yeah, I actually was just going to chime in. I think one thing that we've sort of identified is I think that, there's a tremendous amount of diversity in our community. And I think that that is something that needs to be sort of embraced and incorporated and considered in all of this planning to really celebrate that in a way that works for everyone. And I think, I know these are like more esoteric strengths, I suppose, but I do feel like the sense of community and the people and the sense of people wanting to engage and to be involved is extremely powerful in this sustainable area, and that, instead of, and also thinking like, the sustainable community is that area is actually kind of broad in terms of like, creating different focal centers versus just one, and sort of how do we connect those focal centers, using, like everyone's talking about, sort of the transportation and the access and also just landmarks, right? So I think there's just that's basically it.
Thank you. Kirby, did you want to go?
Yes, I mean, just to piggyback on Monica, she is so spot on. And I mean, that is, every community is diverse and made up of rich cultures and different heritage and different experiences. And this is what the Baltimore County Arts Guild is trying to solidify in a unified way of this public art. I'm so excited what Monica and the Guild are doing to try to unify these different aspects that make up, the fiber and the threads of Catonsville. It's not one group, it's multiple groups. And it's an interesting and also a challenge to bring in those kinds of opportunities where we can weave the threads together with rails to trails and festivals and the music and Catonsville, Music City, Maryland, lots of exciting things. But how can we do this where we're sparking a bigger picture for the county is our challenge. But I also think that, I don't know, personally, I think we got it going on. So that's my 2 cents. Sorry.
Oh, good. Yeah, thank you for sharing.
And Sophie, I also wanted to say, like, just in the few months that I've been the executive director at for the Guild, the sense of collaboration, which of course has been facilitated by our public arts project, but I still feel a really, sort of a united front on how do we, utilize all of our strengths together to make this sustainable area just exceptional. So I just want to say thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you. Any other thoughts? There are any thoughts on health services in the area or access to any necessary services that you use on a day-to-day basis? Is there a lack? Are you happy with it? Are you happy with the farmers market? Those are some of the other things to think about. Kirby, go ahead.
Hi, yeah. some really great things happening, and just like the farmers market has just really galvanized the community. I've been here 33 years, and when I moved to Catonsville, it was a pretty dead little town. But some of the things like you're bringing up as far as community gardens, I do hear a lot of cry for that, and that's a really great way to bring community together. However, in the proximity of Boulder City and the oldest county, in Maryland, our land is precious. So those are interesting aspects on how we could possibly bring that to light. And maybe there's a way, like we are, Namita, as you expressed, having private parking lots to cooperate with the community and the greater whole economically. Maybe there are ways we can find a little bit of patches of land, private land, that could possibly be a community garden space. Of course, first thing that comes to mind with me is the children's home, because it really is sitting on a nice piece of land that in some of ways is unutilized, and also Spring Grove. But those are some of the things which would actually tie in youth environment, youth involvement too. So there's a lot of good things about that.
Yeah, thank you. Joe, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I just want to kind of piggyback off what Kirby just said, that we actually have donate portions of all funds that we raise to the German Children's Home, and we've been invited to do huge festivals there and so forth. So they're very open, Kirby, to doing any kind of event there whatsoever, and they're very gracious. I know several years ago they tried to turn that building behind the German Children's Home into like an amphitheater, but there was a little pushback in the community. But there's quite a big space there, and they're very open to working with us as a community to have community events there.
Wow. Well, events would be amazing, because that's like a one-off. I don't know. Can you still hear me? I hit a button, so I wasn't.
I got you.
We can hear you.
Okay.
We can hear you. Yeah.
I wasn't sure if I cut myself off.
Yeah.
One-off events would be amazing, but the idea of a community garden is, I don't know if the public knows that they're open for that. So that would be a great, that's a great project to get out to the public. I think you'd have a lot of people
we should try to explore it more, try to explore that, because they said the land's just sitting here and they'd love to put it to use and have the community use it and so forth. I mean, we sat with them for several hours last year, and they're open to any ideas whatsoever, that help their cause. So it's a good idea.
Awesome. Joe, your last name? I'm sorry, I didn't get the list of people coming on late.
It's Gardangi.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. That's really good to know. I definitely did not know that, so that's good to include.
That would be a great first project for Pat Young.
There you go.
Let's get them together. Okay.
Matt, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that's kind of that's a strength, but it's underutilized is, there's a lot of public land that sits in lots that are adjacent to other lots that are public land. And I really think that, and if you look at the map, if you go in like my Baltimore County and you start looking at partials, especially ones that don't have a lot of street frontage, you will find there are a lot of partials in there that are owned by the county. And I really think that this is something that could be used to, that this is a strength that could be used towards quality of life, because the land is already acquired, it's already held by the county. it's the people's land essentially at that point. And I think that is a potential strength. I also think that in some of these situations, maybe there could be public-private partnerships. For example, there's a couple lots that are part of it sits within a flood zone. Maybe the county can make a deal with let's build a parking lot for a park, and we can utilize that for the property owner can utilize that for their commercial interests at other times, something along those lines. I have there's one lot that comes to mind, which is at Ingleside and Chrysler Place up near the Walgreens. That is like that. It's actually been held by a church for 30 years, and it's about a third of the lot sits within within a flood zone. So, and then behind it is county-owned land and a retention area, a water retention area, and there's actually goes it's many acres back there that is owned by the county. So I think that maybe something.
I just said fantastic. This is great to know.
Yeah, again, I mentioned to Joe that the Westtown, the amphitheater behind Westtown, that's kind of that is one of the partials that backs up to all this. So it is a pretty large area that's back there, and it's on one side it is commercial with the Route 40 commercial corridor, but it really ends at that wooded area. And it goes all the way back to where things start getting residential and into what I consider Catonsville proper.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, these are all really great strengths and opportunities. Thank you for everybody for sharing. I think we're going to move on to talk about weaknesses, and then we can get into the outcomes. I know talking about weaknesses always kind of leads into that anyway. So in the 2018 plan, the weaknesses were noting that there's significant economic disparities within the SC area, primarily between rental areas with higher proportions of rentals compared to some of the other areas. The second one was a lack of recognition of the historic Maryland National Road, and then again the failure to capitalize on tourism in that sense. So again, the heritage tourism. And the third one was a disjointed network of arts and entertainment opportunities, which I think we've already kind of in the past 5 years started to work to improve that. So that's really great to see. Are there any other weaknesses that we want to bring up? Feel free to unmute as usual.
I'm going to say walkability on our main roads. I think that's a huge problem we have. We have a lot of traffic, and we in many of our roads are very unfriendly when it comes to folks who are not in automobiles. And honestly, they're not even that friendly to automobiles, to be perfectly frank with you. So that's something that really we could utilize, that we could really use for improving quality of life, expanding our sidewalk network in Catonsville.
Mm-hmm. Totally agree. Also, we have a major challenge that had been accommodated for decades, but now seems to not be amenable to the state, is that our main highway here, our Frederick Road, our first national byway of the United States, is not as easily able to be shut down for some of these economic draws. And that's what concerns me. Obviously, we had the arts and crafts event there on Frederick Road for decades. And then it was moved. And now it seems like, and Namita, you would have much more insight to that than me, that we're not able to reinstate this. And I don't understand, because we're able to shut down Frederick Road for 4th of July. Why are we not able to accommodate this for a long life tradition for Catonsville, which is the Arts and Crafts Festival, or possibly future other events. That's an interesting challenge.
Yes, and just want to quickly chime in. Frederick Road is a state highway, and the state highway has asked us not to hold that event on Frederick Road because closing the state highway for one full day is a challenge for them, and they just don't want to do it. This is the feedback that I have received. I will try because it's done for July 4th parade, but let me see what I can achieve with that aspect. But the previous executive director filled me in with this information that the state highway, the state authorities, they don't want to hold the event there and close the state road for one full day.
Yes, I hear you, Benita, and that does make sense. And maybe there is again something that our either our county council or our county legislation can maybe get to. There's no reason for something that has held for decades to not be accepted when they still are accepting 4th of July. So, but you're right, and you've got the connections. But I know that the excitement and the energy that was engaged on Frederick Road itself, visually, along with some of the businesses doing their best ever that day, other businesses not at all. They choose to close down, but you're doing a great job, and CAA is amazing to help facilitate the location and all that. But those are the kinds of things that I think of from a town vibrant and arts and entertainment district is where I'm coming from.
Yeah, thank you, Kirby, for the appreciation. But there's also a nuance to it that if we hold it on Frederick Road, we don't have a rain date like how it was this year. It was on the 11th, and the weather was so bad that we had to postpone it. And everybody was surprised that we had a rain date because of obviously the location that has changed. So I'll just see the silver lining to it. But yes, we don't have a rain date if it is held on Frederick Road. So
correct, that's true.
Joe, I see your hand is up. Did you have something to add? And Monica after that.
I was just looking at the chat here, and Matt brought up a good point. I know Frederick Road is a tricky situation to shut down, and I know we should do it, ever since I was a little kid. I mean, I'm a 53-year resident here in Catonsville, and that was the biggest thrill in the world to walk down Frederick Road and enjoy everything going at the Arts Festival, and that's what you look forward to every fall. So that's a valid point, but there's federal and state roads, and I understand the safety concerns and stuff like that, but Matt, that's a valid point. I'm with you there.
I think with there are other roads that really could accommodate for things like this, like Meller, Ingleside, Bloomsbury, even Edmondson, which is an extremely wide road. You could actually do quite a lot on Edmondson Avenue if you wanted to.
Yeah, I will have to check in with our county Department of Transportation to see if that's something that's possible, and then we can kind of move forward from there. Monica, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I was sort of on Matt's idea. I think, maybe, using that sort of, shutting roads down is sort of another way to shift at times to share the energy of different areas. But also, Sophie, I don't know, I think you're writing this down, but I do question like the relationship of the state with the county on that with Frederick Road, right? Because whatever, yeah, you know what I mean. So, and then also, with the public arts, one thing that came up is sort of like doing, and people have mentioned this in our meetings, was sort of doing something for a couple hours shutting down a road for a couple hours and doing activities and arts kind of things, just so that people start getting a different feel for the roads that's not necessarily driving. So it's sort of like having a little festival, like a short, 3-hour thing, sort of like the farmer's market, but not like, but on a street somewhere that sort of starts, shifting and moving around the focus, and sort of then just sort of creating the idea of maybe being able to create some new pathways and that kind of thing. I don't know if that makes sense, but
Yeah. Thank you. And Monica, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I know we were kind of talking about doing an art walk to kind of liven up some of the alleyways that people use as pathways. So I don't know if you want to expand on that a little bit. I know we're kind of talking about weaknesses, but we can kind of get into the outcomes.
oh yeah, one weakness I wanted to talk about. There's a couple I forget is there are no like this is like directly in Catonsville, but like the resources of it's kind of a food desert for sure. And also like business, like printing and stuff. Like there's not a lot of um resources for businesses like inside I don't know. There might be, but I think there's some need there. But in terms of outcomes, yeah, it's just sort of planning events like we had talked about with the alleyways and stuff like that, like Matt was saying, and it's just sort of like making short versions of things and sort of closing down alleyways or somehow decorating alleyways, like using art to sort of landmark areas, that could be used, for different things. I guess I'm also thinking like in terms of the sustainable part, like sort of maybe assessing, and this might even fall into the parking as sort of like the parking idea, like assessing different areas within the sustainable area. Matt's named a few in terms of the amphitheater and stuff like that, like places that are underutilized, and then finding creative ways to introduce people to those areas. Like I think we've really touched on that tonight, but I think that could be like just sort of a survey of potential locations for, either closing down roads and or a lot that could be, I know there's a great lot on Winters Lane, like just finding places that aren't necessarily front and center that can really start to create a sense of possibility in different areas of the community.
Yeah, thank you, Monica. And Matt, I see in the chat, Office Depot and Staples moved out of Catonsville recently. So it's clear that there's a lack of these business resources. So that's important to mention. I am going to pull up the slides for what the outcomes from the previous plan were, and then we can kind of officially transition into talking about those. So in the 2018 plan, there were again 2 outcomes listed that are pretty broad. One, expanding the area's status as a thriving arts hub, working with the Arts Guild to get designated as an A&E district. That's been completed, so that's really great. And then support arts and cultural events through investment of using grants through the state and county. And then the second outcome was greater recognition and access to historical and cultural resources. So again, that kind of heritage tourism feeling coming up again. So are there any other outcomes that we haven't mentioned yet that you want to bring up?
I would like to say that we don't actually have we have between Catonsville, Woodlawn, and Arbutus, we have like almost 100,000 people here. There is not, we don't have an emergency room honestly for this area. There's no hospital. You brought up the things that could affect health. If folks have to be put in an ambulance and taken downtown, that could be time lost. And honestly, I think we probably have the population now to have a small general hospital here.
I think that's a really good point. Thank you for bringing that up and kind of mentioning health. I know we have a couple people from HHS from the county on here. I'm not sure if you have any comments about that or if that's kind of your area. But feel free to chime in.
Hi, Sophie. This is Shakima Davy. I'm from the Health Department, Community Health Services. That's not really my, I would say, department for an emergency room, for a general hospital. So that is a good point. That area does not have a general hospital. The health department has, since May 2021, had about 15 mobile clinics for testing for COVID and COVID vaccine, but Matthew is right, there is no hospital in that area.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Any other comments? Either ideas for how we can change or just general thoughts?
I think one thing that could help, and we were talking about housing, it kind of overlaps with that, is maybe make financing available for more financing available for multifamilies, especially for small businesses to purchase those kind of buildings. So we don't have these like mega landlords coming in, building, huge things, and pushes out all the locals who are in the business. I think that's something that could be kind of helpful. In some places the municipality can back those kind of loans.
Paul and then Shakima afterwards.
So I would say that, I know with the new part of the district that's going to, down by Westgate and Academy Heights and whatnot, I know that for their quality of life, just to start some sort of discussion with the property owners down there to try to, facilitate some sort of redevelopment there. A lot of people that I spoke to in those communities really feel as though that they are left out of the advantages of living real close to the village, and having those walkable amenities and things like that. Um, and again, the good news is that they're all willing to see some density come along to facilitate the amenities that they want to see. Another thing that I think should be an action plan is to start doing some pop-up traffic calming. I've seen examples around the country where a lot of people do this to try to bring more people, improve bikeability, walkability, without really any capital improvement being made, just kind of trying things out. And so that might be, say, on Frederick Road, to just, well, let's experiment with getting rid of the street parking for one day. And just, make that where it's wide bike lanes and really make a push to try to get more people to come down to the village without without a vehicle. I think that would be a good goal for us to have, and certainly to try to figure out some way that we can do some live work units. Some of the older properties on Frederick Road, there are apartments up top. I know one business, Umami Bistro, actually functions as a live work unit. But other than that, there are not a lot of those. And that is something that's very good for sustainability and to facilitate small business development.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
Shakima, go ahead.
Yeah, the other thing I wanted to add is that this area doesn't have a local health center either. I've been with the county for about 8 years, and I was told by my colleagues that there used to be a health center in Catonsville. I know there's some people who have commented that they've lived here in Catonsville all their lives. So I don't know if that would be something that the community would be interested in, having a local health center. I believe the nearest one is Woodlawn. Is that right, Matthew? Woodlawn Health Center?
I think so. I think that, yeah, there used to be
Yeah.
one, or I think one Winters Lane like a stone's throw from Frederick Road, but
Yeah,
they're
my
not doing
understanding
much.
was it was very underutilized rather. So that could be something if we see the needs of the community changing and the need that for a local health center, that would be, of course, a health department, local health center.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you. That's a really good point. And definitely something that we should incorporate. Any other thoughts? I know Monica and I we briefly touched on some of the public art installations. I think another idea that we had talked about a while ago was doing an art walk or incorporating some of those ideas that other cities have done. Any other thoughts on something like that? Any placemaking initiatives?
I think we need to just we need to think about putting this stuff where there's density. I mean, at the end of the day, you know, we have done a lot of these kind of things in areas that are less dense. You know, a lot of the quality improvement projects, things that look nice, et cetera. We've done them where it's easy because there's, you know, it doesn't have the density and, you know, the people to potentially fight it, et cetera. But I really think we need to be pushing in on our dense areas to improve the quality of life. I mean, it's one of those basic building blocks of urbanization. You know, as you urbanize, you have to consider, you know, you have to consider that, especially in your densest areas.
Yeah, thank you. Molly, I'm not sure if you have any thoughts about what you're doing with Parks and Rec or Rec and Parks. I always say that backwards.
Understandable. Well, I just wanted to share two things. One, that Benjamin Banneker Historical Park is currently undergoing repairs to the roof, so that'll improve its current use. And then there is funding to expand that as well in terms of thinking about historical tourism and those kinds of resources within Catonsville. And then also there was an acquisition of a property. We call it the Belgrove Park site on Edmondson Avenue. So that adds a little bit of parkland within the area. And currently there aren't designs for that, but there is just a little bit more public land.
Yeah, thank you. That's helpful. Mandy, I know you just joined, so feel free to chime in with any thoughts. We're kind of talking about different outcomes that can improve quality of life, which is a very broad topic. But anything you know about is helpful to share. Sally as well, I know code enforcement, some parts of the area have more of an issue with that than others. I'm not sure if anybody has any specific areas they want to mention that have specific issues, but we can try to come up with a solution for some of those.
Well, I have a go ahead.
Sorry.
Kirby, go ahead.
Go first.
You know, one of the things I think that we've all touched on are all so important, and they're a very diverse list. And I don't know if this is something that helps the renewal of the sustainability, but for me, I try to figure out how can we just continue to grow the brand of Catonsville. And so this is something that the Catonsville Arts District Advisory Board is looking at, and Monica's help with the Guild in, you know, really creating our own website and hoping to also obviously collaborate with the Chamber. You know, how do we draw the outside public to our community? So I see that one of the lacking things we have is this umbrella directory, for lack of a better description, of what is so fabulous about the Southwest Baltimore County area, Arbutus, Woodlawn, you know, all the things that we've got going on. you know, how do we get that megaphone off of Frederick Road and outside of 21228? That's a very big challenge. I understand. But yet we have so many great things going on to date that we certainly can improve upon and expand with our own challenges, such as, you know, having a village essentially with a state highway going through it, that we have limitations on things we can do. But I'm hoping that there's a way that we can facilitate and expand that branding, I guess, for lack of a better description. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. That's a good point. Matthew, do you want to go ahead? I know you just put some comments.
Yeah, to add to her point, you know, we really don't have anything that really marks us. You know, we have a couple signs that say "Welcome to Catonsville" on Frederick Road, but other than that, we really don't. We don't have anything when you're coming out from Baltimore City on Edmondson Avenue. We don't have anything when you're heading south on Ingleside Avenue from US 40. We don't have anything. You know, we don't have anything that really marks the town. When we go up to you know, when you go on the Beltway, I mean, you don't have much that really announces the place. You know, for years it even said like Fred Road. We didn't even have the full name of the Frederick Road on there for years and years. So I mean, like we need to start thinking about that kind of stuff. You know, I think that you know, if you were talking about the brand, you need to know when you cross in that's where you're at. I think that's a very important thing. I go to many towns, especially ones that are incorporated. And as soon as you hit the corporate limits, you know you're in that town. And I think that's like, you know, the fact that we're not incorporated, we don't have a function to be able to do that automatically. So I think it's something that we really need to do, you know, from on another level to get that done.
Yeah, I agree
Also,
with Matt here too. I think you're absolutely right. You know, Matt, the visibility of Catonsville is something, you know, as a local, and realizing there aren't those signs that tell you, hey, you're in Catonsville, you know, or hey, you're in Music City, Maryland, which is an even bigger draw, you know.
Hey, how about a list of the restaurants that are on Frederick Road, putting them on the Beltway? You know, you have a very busy corridor right there between I-95 and I-70. That is one of the busiest corridors in the country right there.
Yeah,
Biggest
that's a good
connecting
suggestion.
corridors. I mean, you know, you should know when you come up on there. Hey, if I get off on this road, there's restaurants, there's, you know,
Music, there's
yes,
entertainment. Yeah.
exactly. You know, like we're
Yeah, that's
not
a good.
utilizing that.
I
Also, I want to add, you know, something that could really be improved is dealing with the runoff on Route 40. I think that is that is a situation that's a quality of life issue for Catonsville. You know, there's you know, millions of square feet of paved area there, and it's all running off into our streams. And you know, if you look at the crime maps, a lot of that crime in the area is centered around Route 40. And I think something needs to be done. There needs to be more patrols and more done on Route 40, because, you know, it's not just the crime, it's the perception of it. And I know many people in Catonsville they won't even go to the local Walmart because they're you know, they have a perception that there's too much crime. So I mean, you know, we really need to work on that as well.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. This is definitely a broad topic, so there's a lot to cover. Joe, I know you had your hand up. Do you want to share anything?
Yeah, I just want to state, you know, branding is so important. Branding's everything. If you brand it, they will come. Perception's 99.999% reality, and that's where we're missing the target here in Catonsville. It really comes down to, if you don't build the perception, they won't come, and then it doesn't become a reality. It doesn't have the influx, or it doesn't build the sustainability or the income into our towns. But you know what Manny just said and Matt just said. Yeah, so you put up all this signage, but then when they come into town, they need a destination. They pull into it, where they get all their information. Where is that? Where do they get their information? How do we tell the story? Where can someone find out the information or walk into a welcome center at Catonsville and someone that came from Kansas City to come here for an event? I mean, where is that information? It doesn't exist. We don't have that. And you can put up all the signs in the world and say, come to my city, but when you get in there, what the hell do I do? Where do I go?
Yeah,
You know?
yeah, wayfinding and
Right.
QR codes or a
All that
community
stuff.
center, as you say, Joe. Exactly.
That's and we gotta get to the 21st century and really it's the 22nd century coming up and use the technology that's at our fingertips. There should be QR codes. There should be, you know, I should be able to pull up a little tourism map that looks like a Grateful Dead concert and literally know where all the restaurants are, where all those shops are, and just like a walking path when I come into town. And you know, it's either you know a local or you don't. And if you're not a local and you don't know a local, then you're lost. And so yeah, we talk about signs and stuff like, but branding is so important. But it stems into, you know, you got to extend that and there's extensions and then use your resources, your technology at hand. And we are so far behind in that realm where I have to go to the Arts and Entertainment website to start seeing this. And it's a great starting point and I love it. But I should be able to walk into Gainesville, pull up my phone, hit a QR code, and I got the information at my fingertips.
Almost like Catonsville needs an economic development authority.
Exactly, you're exactly right. And
Exactly.
you're
Tied into Baltimore County tourism.
right, exactly, and it's spot on. And putting up signs is simple, but then you got to back it up with something. You know, you can put the perception of, hey, pull in here, come in here. But then what do I do? What the hell do I do? I don't know. Is that restaurant good? I don't know. Where can I get Mexican food? Do I got to go over Agave or El Guapo or, you know, we have no central tourism association really that just focuses on that. And we have the chamber. I love the chamber. I love the Arts Guild. You know, I love A&E. And I love my association, Music City Maryland Association, and etc. But there's no hub, and we need to develop that. We need the county's help. You know.
That's the umbrella. Exactly. That's the umbrella.
Yes. And
Yeah.
it's easy to do if we just work together. It's not hard. Technology is not hard. It's not hard to build an app. It's not hard to put a QR code up on every event we have. We put QR codes on billboards from Ellicott City to GL Shacks, and people just shoot it off their phone when they're driving down the road. And they know every festival or event we're having in Catonsville at that time. It's not rocket science. It's not costly. It's very cost efficient to do these things and it will benefit us all. It's just we got to build a conglomeracy here where we are the rose among, you know, the rose in the cow pasture, and that's what we are, and make it that. But we got to use what's at hand and not try to reinvent the wheel. Is what I'm saying. And just I didn't mean to banter on, but it's kind of a, you know, we started this association because we want to make Catonsville a mini Nashville. Go fly down to Nashville. Look how it works. Look at their associations. Look at their music city associations and so forth. And if we can mimic that and then turn Catonsville into that kind of model, where speaking with Paul, you know, you got multi-use where someone's living above the shop and they run a bar down at the bottom. It can work. It's sustainable. It brings in tons of income. People will fly from all around the country to come here, and that's what we want. We don't just want the local communities to come here. We want a destination in America. You know, put us on the map. That's what we want. And yes, it starts with signs, but we gotta get a little more savvy than that. You know, is what I'm saying here.
Yeah, that's a really good long-term goal. And hopefully we can take some of those steps to get there. Monica, I know your hand was up, and then Matt, you can go after her, and then Paul.
I just wanted to give a shout out to Baltimore County Tourism because they do have a new website and you can put events and stuff up on there, and it's very user friendly. We are in the process of redoing the A&E, and I'm certainly we are going to have a community calendar on there. And I do hear what Joe is saying, and I totally agree with sort of like the economic development. So I just wanted to put a shout out for that kind of stuff. There was something else, but it's now gone, so I'm going to turn it over.
Thank you. Matt, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I'd like to add with this. I mean, I think that if we were to have an economic development authority for Catonsville, I think it could be self-sustaining. It basically based on the improvements to the tax base that would come from, bringing more folks in and having more economic activity in this area. I think that that's something that we need to look at. I know the county is pretty frugal, but sometimes you got to invest in the, it's it's a worthy investment if it can really lead to something. So I think that I just want to add that. And I mean, the fact of the matter is that you should be able to come in and scan a QR code or what have you, just to, or a website that says what's in Catonsville, or as I said, you could have a highway sign that says, Mexican restaurant and an arrow and music venue and an arrow, something along those lines. Just so, hey, you're in a destination. I know that Joe kind of wants to create this like mini Nashville, Gatlinburg kind of thing, and I think that we could really be onto something, especially given our the amount of automobile traffic that comes through the Beltway every day. That is not just locals for the highway, but folks who are coming through between the two major national freeways that are in our backyard.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing. Paul, did you want to say anything? I know your hand was up, but now I don't see it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I must say, I live, a couple, not that I'm against the music and it being Music City, but, I'm like, what is Nashville like? And I pulled up Nashville and just looking at, Nashville's a city. Nashville is not kind of a inner tier suburb. So I think the notion of having like programmed music and music going on, and the music and especially the festivals and the volume level has been somewhat of a contentious issue. I know that there were some people that had some problems with it and whatnot. I think, the music being a component of a more robust arts program, but not necessarily, to have, I mean, I wouldn't be excited about living and having, the community being like overrun with tourism. I would prefer to see some local density being developed so that we can create the type of vibe and scene and economic activity that we like, that this, and some people are coming from outside, but again, kind of, that's just my 2 cents. And, I just don't think that, we have the parking for it and, or the infrastructure for it. But again, having, very, very Nashville light. Again, I've never been to Nashville, Joe, so I can't really, comment on exactly what it would be like down there. But, a lot of things like that, I think that we need to be, sensitive to that. It right smack dab in a residential community. So.
Yeah, thank you for adding to that. And Matthew, I see in the chat, noise would be less of an issue if in a higher density commercial corridor or an indoor facility. Yeah, it's definitely one of those things where the infrastructure would need to be improved to reach that level. Before I kind of close out the meeting, since we're over a bit, does anybody have any other comments that you want to share? And, feel free to email me afterwards if you have anything else to say. Nope. All right. So our upcoming, oops, sorry. So the survey for this meeting will go live next week. It will be open for 2 weeks as the other two have. And again, it'll be online and there will be physical copies at the Catonsville Senior Center and Library. Next slide. The first two topic area surveys are live and available online and in those locations, again, the library and the senior center. So please be sure to share those with your groups, your neighbors, anybody else that you think would be interested in participating. You can scan the QR code here to get to those, and I will also send out an email with those linked so you have that easily accessible, and Gone put it in the chat as well. So yeah, please be sure to share those. Again, if you have any thoughts, afterwards, right after this meeting in 2 weeks, please feel free to email me. I know most of you guys have my regular email. You can also email this, suscom.catonsville@baltimorecounty.md.gov. And then this QR code here takes you to our main Sustainable Community homepage. And that's all I have for you. Thank you all so much for participating and joining. Also, I'll be sure to send out an email with kind of our next steps in the process, since this is our last focus group meeting. And yeah, I really appreciate you all coming out. Again, feel free to email me if you have any other thoughts, or if you just want to chat about it.
Thanks, Sophie.
Thanks. Good night, everybody.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, Sophie.
Thanks.